jazz, if you hit a wrong note, you just hit it a second time extra loud. So it sounded on purpose. And I think you are connected now. Yeah. I had a setting incorrect, and I will never make that mistake again for the next 3 minutes at least. Okay.
No worries. Well, we are now live on our YouTube channel as well.
Man, the weather looks beautiful where you guys are.
It does, doesn't it?
Yes.
It's bright and sunny and 21 Celsius, 70 Fahrenheit. How's that? Actually, it's warmer than that.
Well, we're testing out some new stuff, and so great to hang out with you guys tonight. As we know, we're about 1 minute to go officially live. And if everybody can hear us, let us know, please. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We've got somebody watching from Colorado, and we've got somebody else watching from Canada. We've got comments showing up all over the place.
Chicago.
Bob says hi from Chicago. Hi, Bob. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight. And also in the comments, if you have any questions, we're going to be talking about solar, and we're going to be talking about boondocking, and we're going to be talking about the RVers TV show. So if you have any questions about solar, boondocking, or the RVers TV show, these two guys are the guy to ask. So go ahead and leave that right in the comments. We got somebody watching from Tennessee, somebody watching from Sugarloaf, New York, Florida, Vegas, Morgan Hill, California, Wichita Falls, Texas, Evansville, Indiana. I could be here all night just reading off these places of where people are watching from. And we just want to say a great big thank you for tuning in. Guys, let me start with this for you. When you started boondocking, do you remember the first time you went boondocking?
Well, I suppose.
Wow, that was
technically our very first time ever dry camping at all was in our very first RV, the Bounder, and it was literally the first night we spent in it, parked outside of a friend's house in the Las Vegas area. And
that's right.
It was hot, and we ran the generator all night long in order to keep the air conditioning going, and we were terrified we were going to fill the gray tank.
And this is actually a good time to ask that, to test our memories, because I see it's April 15th and April 11th, 4 days ago, was 17 years to the day that we drove away from our Sticks and Bricks house and started full timing. So the fact that John can remember what happened 17 years ago is a miracle.
Well, either that or I have a very vivid imagination and I just made that whole story up.
We're going to go with either of those options tonight. So for future answers, feel free to use that vivid imagination. I just wanted to say hi again from somebody who's watching on Facebook from Santa Clarita, June from Santa Clarita, California. We've got a few other people watching from Chicago, Seattle, Washington, Philadelphia, Palm Desert, California. Again, I could be here all night just hanging out with the people who are watching. And we just want to make sure that everybody is staying safe out there. And if somebody has someone in their family who serves in the medical field, we just want to say thank you to you. We know you as a family are making sacrifices, as well as thank you to the people who are actually in the medical field for being willing to take care of all of us during this time. Guys, let's just jump right in. And the first question is a very important one. This is from John. It says, why are Peter and John sitting in each other's regular chairs? It's like looking in a mirror. So let's start with that question right there.
That obviously is someone who has seen us live on Patreon before, yes, when we were on Patreon the last couple of years. I don't know what happened.
It's just we just sort of transferred from the other side of the table to being on the same side of the table, and that's now a mirror image.
This is what we call it's what we call an Easter egg, and so obviously, it's John Shretlin. Yeah. So John, you win the Easter egg hunt because you noticed. And Adam, if I could, one thing I'd like to mention before we get too deep into questions about RVing, since many of you are here watching on our RVgeeks YouTube channel, you may not know Adam. And Adam, maybe you can introduce yourselves to our audience as well before we get going.
Sure, I would love to. So my name's Adam, and I'm a full-time RVer as well. Let me just see if I can do this picture-in-picture swap. I'm a full-time RVer as well. Great friends with Peter and John, and also I'm the online host of the RVers TV Show. So we're going to be bringing you all kinds of behind-the-scenes content, and I'm going to be the guy answering those questions for you if you have any questions about the show and what's coming up. And you can also follow our YouTube channel. That's the RVers TV for behind-the-scenes content, and also some content from my wife and our 3 boys. We are the RVers family. How was that for you guys?
That was a very good introduction.
That sums you up in a nice little nutshell with a little ribbon on top.
Speaking of your involvement with the show, for those who don't already know, I want to mention that we are currently in the season 1 rerun of the RVers on the Discovery Channel. As a matter of fact, just so happens that this coming Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern, episode 3 is going to air, and this last segment in that is when John and I talk about boondocking, and some of the things we'll talk about tonight are mentioned in that segment coming up this Saturday morning on Discovery.
Yeah, and one more thing we do want to mention is that we are also on Fun Roads TV. So if you have access to Fun Roads TV in your area, then you want to check their local listings because each different area airs the show at different times, but it's available on Thursdays at prime time, along with some of the other shows that our producer, that's Dark Dog Entertainment, creates and broadcasts. So you also want to check out Fun Roads TV, Discovery Channel, and then if you have PBS, then again, they air their own show schedule, so you want to contact your local PBS to find out when it's available there. Well, guys, let's jump right into some questions about boondocking, about solar, and let's get my ugly mug out of the corner. There it is. So we had some questions that came in before the show started. So what I'd really love to talk about is a question from Liz. And Liz asks, if you're not a DIY, where can you find reliable help to help you install some solar?
That's a great question.
Liz, I think I know who that is. So we don't only do all of our own work ourselves on the RV. We've done a couple of videos where we showed ways to find reliable, reputable people to do regular maintenance, repair work, but also installation and upgrade work. And I'd suggest that particularly with solar, solar isn't the kind of thing, and the battery systems that are often installed along with solar systems.
They go hand in hand.
Those are not things that are usually or typically installed by your neighborhood RV repair shop or your RV dealer necessarily, because it's a fairly specialized thing.
Yeah.
There are resources out there that you can look at to find someone who has a great reputation out there. For example, IRV2, the forums there.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's definitely the kind of thing that works best with crowdsourcing. So getting input from as many people as possible on who they've used is really your best bet. So the forums at IRV2, you can ask either in your brand forum. So if you're a Newmar owner or a Winnebago owner, you could ask people what experience they've had. You can also look on Facebook. There are several Facebook groups for RV solar. And they have a lot of information if you're planning on doing it yourself. They can be a great resource for asking people questions about what you're planning, or if you're looking for an installer in your area. There are a lot of mobile installers that do really great work, and it's just a matter of sort of coordinating your schedule with when they're going to be in the same area. But, you know, it is a bit of a challenge.
Do your research. You want to find someone who has experience installing the type of solar system you're putting in. If you're doing a particularly extensive installation, you want someone who has references, who you've gotten good word, you know, either online or from people you know personally.
Because we have heard the horror story. Somebody went to their local dealer and had them do a solar install, and then they drove away, and a couple months later they were having all sorts of troubles because it was just not well integrated with the components they already had on board, and so it didn't work well for them.
Right.
And so talking with somebody who does it, you know, full time, there are businesses, particularly if you're targeting some of the more common areas, Southern Arizona and the desert Southwest, near Quartzsite and Yuma, there's a lot of installers. Southern California, Florida, those are places that are more hotbeds of A, snowbirds, so therefore people who are probably interested in solar installs, and then B, of course, sun.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you happen to be located in like, say, for example, in the suburbs of New York City in the winter,
it's a little harder,
and wanted to find someone to do a solar install on your RV, it might be more difficult.
Yeah. You might need to travel.
Yep.
So I know we do have a lot of DIYers here, and so some of them are starting to ask questions. We already got some questions before the show started. So one question that we got is, do we need to wire our solar panels in series or parallel?
Great question. So just to be clear, so people know what that is. Series is when you wire your solar panels and daisy-chained one to the other.
Positive to negative.
And you end up with a positive at one end of that entire array and a negative at the other end of that entire array. And you connect that into your solar controller.
And doing that means you're basically creating, it's just like taking multiple batteries and attaching them that way. You end up with one giant battery. Well, with the solar panels, you're effectively creating one giant solar panel. So what you're doing when you do that is you're increasing the voltage output of the whole system and keeping the amperage output the same.
In other words, you're adding all your voltages. So, for example, in rough numbers, if you were to take 12, you're doing a 12-volt system, and if you took two 12-volt panels and you hooked them up in series, that would put out 24 volts.
Right. So the advantage of doing that is if you have a situation where you're not particularly worried about shading, so you're installing them on your roof where your roof vents and your air conditioner and things like that are not going to cast shade on any of the solar panels, and you want to use an MPPT charge controller, which is a special type of solar charge controller that can take the extra voltage you're generating from that bigger array and convert that into extra amps to charge the batteries with. And it is the more efficient system, so it is a more efficient way of charging because you're maximizing everything. Having higher voltages then means you can use thinner cables to connect the solar panels down to the charge controller, and then from there to actually not from there to the battery. You still need big cables to connect to the battery, but right. it makes it so that you have less loss in that cabling and you can use smaller cable as a result, which is a help.
So yeah, an upside to, in other words, there's no one answer. I was going to say the short answer to the question is there's no right or wrong way to do it, and there are reasons for both.
Yep.
So in a nutshell, a pro of wiring in series is that you can use smaller gauge cable.
Yep.
And a pro of going to a parallel setup, which is where you have all of the individual plus and minus hot and cold lines going down to the solar controller individually. The pro of that is that you now have much better shade tolerance, where if one panel gets shaded by a tree, the others aren't affected. The downside to that is that you need thicker cable.
Right, because you're adding up the amperage output of all the panels then, and the more amps you have, the bigger cabling you need.
Right.
So you would potentially have more loss. Now, a lot of people end up doing a hybrid and will do series parallel configurations.
That's what we did.
If you have to do even numbers because they have to match. But if you had 6 panels, you could wire them all in series, you could wire them all in parallel, or you could do them in groups. So you could take 3 and 3 or 3 pairs of 2, and that way you get some of the advantages of both.
Right.
So it depends on how many solar panels you're putting on, how much money you want to spend on a charge controller and things like that. So there is no one correct answer. Each system has its benefits, and it just sort of depends on how you tend to RV, whether or not you're more prone to getting some shade on the roof, or if you're going to be in the desert Southwest, where you really don't have to worry about it.
And I saw that Iggy Conrad mentioned that Brian from RV with Tito is developing a list of installers.
Oh,
Brian
great.
is an awesome resource for that. So once check out RV with Tito and see if he's got that list up yet. And I'll just throw in there that Brian and Melissa of RV with Tito are going to be featured on the show this coming year.
Keep your eyes peeled.
So that's the long answer, Mike, and probably for your specific situation, you'll need to get some more specifics. But
I think the host is telling us not to be so good.
I didn't mean it like that, but what I did mean is we have to understand there's no hard and fast rules, specifically when we're diagnosing, a question online.
And again, obviously, we can't answer everybody's specific detailed question, particularly here in this format. But if you do have more follow-up, you can always leave them as a post on either our website or on the YouTube or Facebook, and we'll try and get you some kind of an answer. But can't promise to answer them all.
Sounds good. Speaking of Facebook, Debbie is watching from Facebook, and Debbie asks, should you initially start with a portable small array, or a small expandable fixed array?
Oh, great question.
So maybe you could start with telling us what those words mean together when we're talking about solar, and then you could help us understand.
Yeah, sure.
Sure. Well, a portable solar system is sometimes called a suitcase system. Looks like a large attaché case or a folding table with a handle on it, and you can take that. It's also called a ground deploy system, where you can open it up, aim it at the sun. If you're
and you just hook it to your batteries, and usually they include their own charge controller right on them, so they're all self-contained.
And those are real handy when you happen to be parked in a shady spot and you want to move those panels over out into a sunny spot so that you can use them.
Yeah.
That's not a bad way to start at all.
No, they tend to be a little bit less expensive.
And don't require installation.
And don't require any kind of installation, which is great, especially if you're not sure whether or not solar is going to work for you. It's a great way to get started with it because it doesn't require anything other than the purchase, and then you just set it up every time you get to where you're going.
And if your question is, how much solar should I get? Let me rephrase that. The most common question we get is, how much should I get? And that sometimes comes from people who spend all of their time fully hooked up in nice RV parks, enjoying the swimming pool and the clubhouse.
Yeah.
And our answer is, before you decide what kind of system to get, figure out what kind of RVing you do.
Yeah.
And if you stay hooked up all the time, don't spend any money on solar. Or if you're going to think about trying boondocking out and you want to get a small solar system, that ground deploy portable system is a good way to start.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then a smaller, more permanent install, so then a permanent installation would be one that you actually mount to the roof of your RV, and you're either going to adhere it or screw it to the roof, which means it's staying there. So, we actually think that the ground deploy, the little portable systems, are an excellent way to get started with solar, because it doesn't involve any other investment than the purchase of the equipment. And then that way it gives you the ability to test it out. Those ground deploy systems can even be helpful when you have a fully installed roof system, because, like Peter mentioned, you could be parked in the shade. And you might need to because it's hot out and you don't want to be baking in the sun. You can now take your ground deploy and move it out into the sun and still be getting some solar charging, where the roof-mounted system isn't.
You can also aim it much more precisely at the sun, when obviously the ones on the roof are fixed in position.
Yeah, so they're a great way to get started.
And I do want to mention that I see that Brian from RV with Tito is here. Hiya, Brian. How are you? And he said that he's got a listing up of installers.
Oh, so excellent.
Check it out. Thanks, Brian.
So Enrique is asking, what is boondocking? So we don't want to go over somebody's head here. Let's help Enrique understand what is boondocking, and then maybe you guys could also tell us why you love it so much.
Boondocking is camping without hookups,
right?
In a nutshell, or dry camping, it's also called. Now, the classic boondocking usually means you're out in the boonies, you're out in the middle of nowhere, but actually you can boondock in many different ways. You could be in a parking lot, like a Walmart lot is technically boondocking, right, if you're doing a night in a Walmart lot, or a rest area, or a truck stop.
Right. Basically, it involves no hookups and no designated camp spot. So, you can dry camp in a state park or in a national forest where you have a designated site and it has a campfire ring and a picnic table and everything, but there's no electric, no water, no sewer.
So
that's dry camping.
In that case, you're dry camping, but you're not boondocking.
Right. If you go out to Quartzsite and you're parked out in the desert among the saguaros with no one else around, you have no hookups, so there's no water, sewer, or electric, but you also don't have a designated site. So then that's boondocking.
And boondocking goes under different names. We just came back from 5 weeks RVing in New Zealand with Tom and Kate, our fellow co-hosts on the RVers, and we were not boondocking there. We were freedom camping.
Yes.
That's what they call it. Same thing.
Which it never hurts to add the word free into something, right? I mean, it's always better when it's free.
Right.
So Tom and Kate just said, hey, John and Peter and Adam. So I've
great.
They're watching on YouTube. So thanks for hanging out, guys.
They're self-quarantined at the moment, too, so they've got nothing better to do either.
I just saw their comment come in. Hi, Tom and Kate. How are you?
But the reason that we like doing it, sorry to cut you off, Adam, but the reason we like doing it is because we like being out in remote areas where there are fewer people around, lots of people like staying in RV parks. They like the amenities of a pool and a hot tub and all those kinds of things, and that's fine.
Or the people being there with other people.
Exactly, and that's great if that's the way you prefer to RV. For us, we like being out by ourselves, and so boondocking gives us the opportunity to go out into those more remote locations, and having solar and managing our resources properly enables us to do it for as long as we can. So that's our story, and we're sticking to it.
So maybe at this point in time would be a good point in time to jump in. We had a question that came in before the broadcast started, and somebody was asking if you could give them some ideas on how to reduce energy and reduce water usage while they're boondocking so they can maximize the amount of time that they are out boondocking.
Yeah, I'll just use that. We'll answer that, but I'll also use that as a quick segue to mention that this coming Saturday morning, it just so happens that is the episode that is going to show, the segment that will show on the RVers on Discovery this coming Saturday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern, is the very last segment is John and me talking about boondocking. And I start off on the roof and in front of the RV outside talking about usage of solar, orientation of the RV to maximize solar and heating and awning placement and refrigerator placement. And then the second half of it, John talks about water and how to save water. So really, those are the two big things for boondocking: power and water.
And so there's a lot of different techniques that you can use. I'll go over the water stuff because Peter will remember the power better than I will. But basically, you want to try and avoid using too much fresh and having too much of it go down the drain into your gray tank, because that's going to require you to move in order to go dump it or refill. So it's, sort of common sense stuff. Clearly, when you're running water, you want to run as little as needed in order to get the job done, and turn it off as soon as you're done. So washing hands, don't turn the faucet on full and then wet your hands and leave it running while you're soaping up, right? Just a trickle, and do it as quickly as you can. You can do things. We do techniques when you're cleaning dishes. We tend not to use paper plates when we're dry camping, just because it's we don't like the waste, and we have the capacity to use our regular dishes. But even so, when we're doing dishes, you put stuff in the bottom that needs to get soaked for a while, and you wash the glasses first and let the water drain down onto the others. I use one bowl to catch water, and then I'll pour that into the pot. And you sort of keep building up water in order to use it to clean other things without it immediately going down the drain. So those are a help.
Sometimes people might even do their dishes in a pail, outside the RV, depending on where they are.
And it depends on the RV park or the campground you're in. Sometimes they've got a station where you can go wash your dishes, and that's a great way to offload some of your water usage and your gray tank capacity.
Well, of course, one of the big things is using a pitcher.
Yeah.
Keeping a gallon pitcher in the house so that when you want to run your hot water up to take a shower, you run it up into the pitcher, not down the drain, and then use that water from the pitcher to flush the toilet, for example.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, the biggie is a Navy shower. So turn the water on only enough to get wet and turn it off again immediately. Soap up, do everything you need to, and then rinse off again with only as much water as you need to. So,
and also keeping your hair short is very handy. I can take a shower in less water than you can, Adam, because you have a disadvantage with that head of hair of yours.
It is a disadvantage to some, I suppose.
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, that's right.
We'll go with that.
Now, on the electrical side, very briefly, obviously you want to use as little power as you can. So having solar and higher-end battery systems like lithium batteries is part of the equation. But the other part of the equation is reducing your power consumption. And LED lights are a very big way to do that. All the lights in our RV are LED. And people who've watched our videos know we've probably done a dozen videos where we've shown how we use M4 LEDs to replace all of our old incandescents, fluorescents, and halogens. And not only does it reduce power, but it reduces heat output as well. Yeah. So that's a big thing. Another is the time you go to bed and get up is important. So you're going to, if you want to stay up really late, you're going to have to keep lights on generally to do that. But if you start to get ready for bed as the sun goes down, and you go to bed when the sun goes down, and you get up when it comes up, saves using lights.
Yeah. And in the video on the episode we talk about orienting the RV. We face east because our windshield then faces the rising sun. So that helps warm it up in the morning if you're camping someplace where it's cool. And so that keeps you from having to run the furnace, which of course uses power. So, it definitely takes practice. We've gotten really good at it over the years because we've done it a lot. But when we first started out, we were not that good.
Yeah, we've practiced having a really good shower head. We have this tiny little shower head that puts out almost no water flow, but it's still enough to shower. And over the years in honing our boondocking cred, if for lack of a better term, we put in our gray tank each day 4 gallons of water. And that's both of us showering every day, cooking
3 meals,
doing the dishes, 4 gallons per day.
Wow.
That's it.
That should come with an award or something. There's got to be some kind of world record on that one.
There are definitely people who do better than we do, but they forego some things that we're not willing to give up.
Right.
Okay, I want to jump in on a couple more comments. One comment is that it does not look like I'm in an RV, and that is true. I am full-time. We are full-timers, but we're with my parents right now while we're waiting out the current situation. So thank you for noticing, everybody who commented that I have full-size bookshelves in my RV. We do have a question.
I'm going to jump in with one quick thing because I just happened to notice that Brian mentioned somebody was asking about the piano music. That's me. As a matter of fact, that's my piano right there. That's the piano that I played the opening intro Maple Leaf Rag on all our original videos.
So there it is.
There you go. I thought I would throw that in because I saw it come up.
Yes, and it's proof that you guys are actually in your RV, whereas I'm obviously not at the moment.
We've been known to do Greenscreen before, Adam, so there's no proof at all.
We should move right along. Brian is asking, with modern charge controllers, I was wondering if you could wire everything in series with bypass wiring to take out a shaded panel out of the series with some relays. What are your thoughts on setting up your system that way?
Wow.
We might need...
Yeah, we might need Tom Morton's electrical skills on that one.
Tom Morton is an electrical engineer, but John's going to try on this, and Tom, you can jump in.
It's certainly something that could be done. I'm not sure that the effort will be worth it because, again, modern solar panels have gotten much better at, sort of bypassing it. They've got the diodes and everything built into them already in order to help that if they do get shaded, hopefully they will bypass. We have our solar system. We have 8 panels on the roof, 4 of them in series and the other 4 in another series. And yes, we do see a diminishment in output from any one of the 2 sides if one of the panels gets shaded, but it's actually not as dramatic as we would have expected from, sort of the folklore on the internet. So I might try doing it without all of that extra wiring first and then see whether or not it really is necessary based off of your RVing pattern. And then if it does, yeah, you could certainly go that way. It would improve things. There's also solar panels now that have their own built-on MPPT charge controller on the unit itself, on the solar panel itself. And so then, yeah, you could wire those in series or parallel, however you needed to. And then they're optimizing each individual panel. That's a new direction that solar's going.
Cool.
And I'm going to apologize to Brian. I am not ready to play a tune at this time.
We asked him that before we went live, and he said emphatically no.
No. Sorry, some other time. If you want to see me play Maple Leaf Rag in its entirety, I did that once on our channel at the Las Vegas Motor Coach Resort. Just look for Maple Leaf Rag.
But he's extremely camera shy when it comes to playing the piano.
I have big stage fright.
We've got a question that came in from Jeff, and he says, I'm thinking of upgrading to a new travel trailer in a couple years. I have 2 panels. Should I mount them on my current travel trailer or continue to use them on the ground until I get the new trailer? What are your thoughts, guys?
Wow.
I think some of that will depend on how long before you're actually going to be doing it.
I said about 2 years. So
yeah,
and how much? It depends on how much you're camping in your current trailer. So is it worth the effort to do the install and permanently install them,
and then have to take them off,
and then have to remove them? That would be a personal decision based off how comfortable you are doing that work.
There's also another aspect. So if you use your solar panels a lot, and you'd like to have them installed for the next 2 years, the cost of replacing them with new panels 2 years from now and leaving them on the RV is not such a bad idea because
it'll increase the resale value on the trailer.
That's
first
right.
Of all.
It'll increase the resale value on your current rig. It'll save you the labor and time and difficulty. And because solar panels are continuing to come down in price, and technology is continuing to improve, you'll end up with less expensive, higher quality panels 2 years from now and get a fair amount of the money back for doing that when you sell your current rig. So I would install them and use them unless you're very rarely going out. If you're only going to get use out of them maybe a couple of weekends a year, then maybe it doesn't matter.
Yeah, the ground deploy is probably a better approach.
Right.
Another question that came in before we got started tonight. Somebody was asking if you could explain the different types of batteries, all the different batteries that are available from all the different retailers, which you would recommend, and is there a reason to choose one over another?
Wow. Yeah. So,
okay. Well, there's three.
There's three basic types.
Flooded lead acid, which are like golf cart batteries.
The typical ones you see.
With the caps on top that you have to check the water and the electrolyte.
The next step up from that would be AGM, which are also still flooded lead acid batteries. It's just a different formulation of that acid, which they can now seal the batteries so you don't have to deal with the outgassing and replacing the water.
And those are about twice as expensive as typical golf cart batteries.
And you get about twice the life out of them, so
and they
it
also,
works out in the end.
And they're completely maintenance-free, and they have better performance.
Right. And then...
But they're not that different than each other.
No. And then there's the big step up to lithium, which is really a whole new technology and brings with it a lot of benefits, but also a fairly hefty price tag. So
people have heard us talking about lithium for a long time. We have a Xantrex Freedom eGen lithium battery system. I know Battleborn is also very popular.
Yeah.
And both those names are huge in the industry.
Yeah.
And we have friends who have Battleborn who get great service from them, and we get great service from ours. But I want to debunk the biggest question about lithium that we hear. People are like, how long before they pay for themselves? And the same thing with solar panels. How long before they pay for themselves? So I would suggest that because of the considerable increase in cost of lithium batteries, that the primary reason for using them isn't as an investment to try to come up with a less expensive solution. Mm-hmm. It's strictly for quality of life.
Yeah.
And the quality of life from lithium batteries, while they are more expensive to purchase in the first place, the quality of life and the complete elimination of battery anxiety is fantastic. And if you're comfortable with what it costs to do, we have never spoken to anyone with lithium batteries on board who was sad that they put them in and felt like it wasn't worth the investment. They are awesome.
But again, we always like to sort of mellow that with the fact that we spent a significant period of time RVing and boondocking and doing all the things we like to do with regular flooded lead acid batteries. We then upgraded those to AGMs because, quite honestly, Peter got sick and tired of having to deal with watering and cleaning the lead acid batteries, and we wanted to just get away from that maintenance task. So we were willing to foot the extra cost to go up to AGMs. And then, of course, the big jump up to lithium, for many people, it's just not worth it right now if you're not really going to take advantage of them. So, if you're a weekender, I don't know that having all of that extra power and the benefits that come with lithium are necessarily worth the cost for only a few weekends a year. So, right. I mean, it's really an equation that each RVer has to go through on their own. Each tech has its place. If you are not camping or boondocking very much and you just tend to go from RV park to RV park, why invest too much in your battery bank, right?
Right. Like, that's the big thing. Sense. If you're not going to be camping off the grid, boondocking, then you don't need any solar panels, really.
Yeah.
And you certainly don't need expensive batteries.
Yeah, I mean, we're full-time, and when we are out and about, we like staying off the grid. We like being disconnected and out in the middle of the nowhere. So It's worth it to us to have that investment because we're actually using it, and it's improving our quality of life, and we think it's worth the money.
And I will tell you,
that's not true for everyone.
I will tell you, when you figure in, will it pay for itself, or will it at least balance itself out financially? There is one big aspect of it that you will. Actually, two. One is you will not replace your batteries for years and years and years and years. Lithium batteries last for 5,000 to 10,000 cycles, many times more than any other battery. And the other savings will come from not spending $30 to $50 a night for an RV park, because you can just go out and camp for free in the desert or other boondocking spots.
And again, if you're going to do that, then yes, you could factor that in as an equation, as saying how long will it take me to repay the cost of this because I'm not spending it on RV parks.
Yep.
But that's sort of an edge case. Most people are not in that scenario.
Right. And I just want to mention, I see a couple of people are talking about outgassing and all. Yep. We do have an unusual setup in our rig. We have lithium batteries for our house, 600 amp hours of Xantrex lithium. And we have AGM chassis batteries. So we use AGM chassis batteries to start our engine. Mm-hmm. And the reason we did that was because we wanted no outgassing next to our beautiful lithium battery because they're on the same tray. So our AGMs don't outgas. There's never any corrosion, nothing to deal with, and it's perfectly clean all the time.
So we've got another question from John. He's asking about one controller or two. And he says, is the decision based on the number of solar panels or the total output of them? So he has 1,830 watts from 6 panels with 2 controllers. So for a newbie like me, maybe you could start by telling me what is a controller, and then we can answer John's question.
1,830 watts from how many panels?
It says 6 panels.
Nice.
Wow, those are big panels.
So the controller is the device that sits between the solar panels and your batteries. And it's what takes the output from the panels and uses it to charge the batteries. So if you need that device in there because you can't just hook a solar panel directly to a battery. It doesn't work that way. Right. It would keep the solar panel from operating at the right voltage, and you wouldn't really charge your battery very well. So you need the charge controller in between. And then it's a matter of, and what he said basically is the number of charge controllers you need is dependent on the number of panels and the total output. So
right, a charge controller has a limit as to how much it can handle.
Yep, voltage-wise and amperage-wise.
Right, so we're putting out 1,300 watts on our roof, and that we had too much to go through one solar controller, so we've split it into 2 solar controllers, and we've taken that opportunity to, as John mentioned before, to do 4 panels in series
to one
controller and 4 panels in series to the other controller, hence giving us a series parallel system.
Sort of. So, in that situation, the other advantage then is, particularly with an MPPT charge controller, those 2 systems can now get optimized for whatever their impact, their particular light is. So in our case, half of our panels can tilt. So those can be angled more directly to the sun, and because they're all on one controller, they can be operating at their most optimum settings to make sure that they're putting out the most power, while the ones that are still flat on the roof might need a different voltage. If they were all in one charge controller, you'd be getting a compromise. So there's advantages.
I'll mention one little thing as well. So another way your batteries can help pay for themselves, we are now settled in to a site for quite some time. We're staying put for a while, and as a result, like with most monthly sites, we are paying for the electricity. We have the circuit breaker to our inverter shut off.
So that basically means that our inverter doesn't know it's on shore power, so it's turned on and powering all of the outlets in the RV.
That means while we're hooked up to shore power here, we're not using it for everything. We're running off our solar panels, so our solar panels are filling our batteries. We're using that, and we're keeping as much of our load as possible off the pedestal to save on our electric bill every month.
So that could factor into an equation if you wanted.
Sure, they're there. Why not use
it? It is a big upfront investment, though, to avoid paying an electric bill every month.
Yes.
So let me jump in at this point in the show and remind everybody that we can watch the RVers Season 1 playing on Discovery. We're partway through Season 1, Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. It's also available on Fun Roads TV, Thursdays during prime time and a few other times. So if you have access to Fun Roads TV, make sure that you check your local listings to find out when you can watch the RVers there. And also, same thing with PBS. You can always check your local listings to find out when you can watch the RVers on PBS. Guys, we've got a question that came in from... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to jump in on that and mention while you were talking about the show that for those who haven't heard yet, that the show not only has moved to Saturday mornings for the reruns of Season 1, but Season 2 will also be on Saturday mornings. So what we're looking at is 12 consecutive weeks on the Discovery Channel, Saturday mornings, 8 a.m. Eastern and Pacific, 7 a.m. Central, and I think 9 a.m. Mountain Time, right? I think that's right, because they come off the West Coast feed.
Check your listing.
However, when season 2 starts on May 16th, Saturday morning, May 16th, season 2 will premiere, and there will be new, obviously new entire episodes, but also there will be new on-the-road segments that feature people like you and your family, Adam, and RV with Tito, and Nikki and Jason Wynn's mom. So,
we've got a question from Debbie, and she's watching from Facebook, and she asked, do you recommend a composting toilet if we love boondocking but we're not full-time yet?
Well, so we do not have a composting toilet ourselves, although we have had the chance to use one on Nikki and Jason's boat when we were visiting with them, and they are very highly liked by the people who use them. It certainly saves you having a black tank to deal with, saves water because now you're not flushing water down the toilet, so that can extend your fresh water availability.
We would actually like to have a composting toilet, and we are big proponents. And when we were down in Panama with Nikki and Jason Wynn sailing their boat through the Panama Canal, we spent a week on board with them in our own ensuite cabin with a composting toilet. Yeah. And we have no problem with it as far as the functionality of it. People think, oh, they're going to smell. Nah. They don't. And they're really a great, a superior way to boondock because they use zero water. We have a couple of issues with them that we'd like to see some changes made to them. Basically, the shape of the bowl and the configuration and the way they handle liquids. And we'd like to see that done in a slightly different way. And we're talking with a couple of manufacturers about possibly making some changes. Yeah. But lots that said, really lots of people love their composting toilets. And we would have one if not for the fact that the way our toilet is mounted up on a platform about this high has made it so that fitting one in our bathroom would require basically
removing that tile,
removing the tile and the subfloor, and we just haven't decided to do that yet.
But yeah, it's definitely a great option, and it definitely increases your ability to dry camp for longer.
Yeah, we mentioned we put 4 gallons of water per day in our gray tank. That is only one of, that's a third of the equation. The other part of the equation is how much do you use up out of your fresh tank and how much do you put into your black tank? Yeah. Now, for us, with 105 gallons of fresh, 65 gallons of gray, and 45 gallons of black, our limiting factor is always the gray tank. We always fill the gray tank. About 2 full weeks of boondocking will fill our gray tank, and the black tank still has capacity, and there's still fresh water left. Now imagine, if you would, if instead of using a good portion of our fresh water to flush the toilet and almost doubling the size of our gray tank by combining the black and gray, imagine what we could do with a composting toilet. We could be out for easily 3 to 4 weeks with no water refreshing. So,
but it's sort of interesting. Debbie mentioned that she's not full time yet, and would that be the determining factor for whether or not you get a composting? And honestly, I don't think the amount of time that you RV is necessarily the determining factor as much as do you dry camp for long enough periods of time that your black tank is now currently an issue, and if so, then composting is definitely a great option.
Yeah, if you don't stay a week or more in one spot, then composting
might not be worth it.
May not be worth bothering with from that standpoint.
You could do it also for the environmental reasons, because again, it's saving fresh water, so that's a good thing.
So in this same topic, Karen is asking, have you heard of Laveo toilets? And what do you think of them? She says a composting toilet would not fit in my trailer. So that's Laveo. Peter, I see your fingers going right away to see it.
I'm Googling. We have not heard of the Laveo toilet. Yes. Oh, that dry flush toilet. Yeah, it's a really interesting concept. It's got basically a bag that lines the bowl.
We have seen this.
You go to the bathroom, and then when you crank it, it basically encapsulates what's there and sort of like almost like vacuum seals it into this little bag.
And we use a vacuum sealer for food. If we use it on the other end, there could be all right.
We have indeed seen those. It seems like they market them for sort of, off the grid cabins and places like that where you might not have access to plumbing.
I'm going to keep this up on the screen. We're going to look a little more later. I see there's some videos about that. Thank you for reminding us about that.
It definitely looks like a cool option if you absolutely needed it. Could be maybe like a good secondary. Pull it in a trailer behind you.
Ray is watching from YouTube, and Ray asks if you would discuss the problem with charging the lithium in cold weather.
Aha. So
it's actually not a problem.
Yeah.
You just
can't
do it.
So, the problem is that it has to do with the chemistry of a lithium battery, and when it gets down to freezing temperatures, the structure of it actually begins to crystallize and can cause a problem. So when you start to recharge it, you accelerate that crystallization, and it basically pierces the membranes of the cells and destroys the battery. So most lithium batteries, if they are a self-contained unit like a Battleborn that has a BMS built into it, so the battery is all self-contained and it has all of its own brains, those brains will prevent the battery from being charged if the internals of the battery have reached freezing.
Which means it cannot hurt itself.
Correct.
But if you were trying to winter, whether you're boondocking or not, if you're trying to winter in a very cold climate like people from Canada might do. Adam didn't mention, you're in Ontario right now.
I am, that's right. Yeah. And it's
cold.
there.
Yeah. So let's say you were in a situation where the outside temperature got down to, say,
sub-zero,
in the teens, 15 degrees Fahrenheit, 10 degrees Fahrenheit, your lithium battery would not be able to charge itself.
If the internals of the battery reach that temperature. So that's some of the hedging, which is if your batteries are installed somewhere where they're even minimally insulated from the outdoor temperatures, the area that the battery is in is not likely to get that cold, and then the inside of the battery is not going to be that cold either. So it has to get pretty cold or be very cold for an extended period of time for that then to become an issue. But again, well-designed batteries include the circuitry to prevent them from damaging themselves. The only issue would be if you were in a super cold environment like that and the protective circuitry was keeping you from recharging the battery, you may deplete the battery and not have power. So that could be an issue, but it's sort of an edge case again.
There's also just a slight catch-22 about this. So lots of drop-in replacements are sold, lithium batteries, to replace your old lead-acid batteries. Well, by definition, a lead-acid battery has to be vented to the outdoors because of the gases that are produced while it's being charged. You cannot have a flooded lead-acid golf cart battery inside your living space in the RV
without proper ventilation
in a heated area, because it has to be ventilated to the outside. So here's where the rub comes in, this catch-22. Someone wants to buy a lithium battery and put it in the same location where their other battery used to be, and that, by definition, is exposed to the elements. Now, what Xantrex did, and one of the reasons we went with Xantrex is because their battery has one brilliant little feature about it that was way ahead of its time. When its battery monitoring system senses that the temperature is below freezing, it turns on an internal heater that surrounds the battery, and it uses some of its own power to heat itself.
And then that way it can be charged.
So our Xantrex battery is in the original location where our lead-acid batteries were. It's exposed to the outdoors and not heated, but we don't have to worry about running it no matter what the weather is because of that.
But a lot of people take advantage of the fact that lithium batteries don't outgas and don't have any issues with being put into an internal living space to now move your battery array someplace inside where it's going to stay warmer.
And many
a lot
people
of people put it underneath, like the bench seat in the kitchen where there's space underneath there. If you've got access to move the wiring and do that, then you now move the batteries into a more temperature-controlled environment, and chances are they're not going to see a freezing temperature.
As a matter of fact, Tom Morton of Morton's on the Move did exactly that, not only in their fifth wheel, where he He put in a Tesla battery. Remember, Tom is an electrical engineer. Do not try that on your own.
He's superhuman in that regard.
Yes, but he put in a rack of 5 Battleborn batteries, I believe, 500
in the Lance camper, yeah.
And also into Kyle and Olivia Brady of Drivin' and Vibin'. He did their Argosy, their classic Airstream Argosy. He put in a bank there, and he put them underneath and in a piece of furniture under a bench inside, so it's in the heated living area of the RV and protected. So that's the way to do that.
So it is definitely something to be aware of, but there are ways around it.
And I see somebody's asking, do Battleborn batteries do the same and heat themselves?
Not the Battleborns. They have a secondary division that actually sells direct to OEMs, and they're beginning to introduce stuff like that on the OEM side.
Right.
It will probably be coming to the retail side at some point. Yep. But even if you don't build it into the battery, I've seen people build their own compartments,
insulated compartments,
and then put a little heater in there with a temperature sensor that just turns the heater on if it gets below freezing.
But you do need to be aware of it.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a comment coming in from Facebook, and it's from Karen Sullivan, and it says, "John, you are so smart."
He is also very biased. That's my sister.
I have a feeling somebody's vying for an extra something at Christmas this year.
I don't know. Either that or she's got projects around the house she might need taken care of.
No, her problem is she has mousetraps in her basement, and she's afraid to touch them. And we come into town, we have to empty them for her. So we will now empty all of your mousetraps when we're back.
We've got another question from Lane, and this is half a question, and the other half of the question came in a little bit later. So the first half of the question is they're thinking of a solar install. Their rig is pre-wired. Is the pre-wiring gauge or size typically substantial enough, or should they look at replacing that?
So it depends on your manufacturer and what they've done. Here's what you want to do.
The short answer is typically no.
The short answer is typically no. So when we hear from people who say, "Hey, my RV came with solar on it," and it's one of those little 1 foot by 1 foot square panels that puts out 5 watts to trickle charge the chassis batteries. Now, more manufacturers are offering actual solar systems now that actually mean something. Like maybe they're going to come with 400 or more watts of solar.
But typically the solar preps have smaller gauge wiring, so they're typically designed for either smaller solar systems, so maybe up to about 400 watts, or you would have to wire them in series in order to keep the amperage down so that you could use that smaller wiring. If you do end up having to redo the wiring because either the size of the array you're planning on putting on is too large, or because you don't want to wire in series and want to get the shade tolerance of wiring in parallel, you'd have to run new cabling. One of the biggest and best routes to do that through is usually the refrigerator vent path. So if you have the vent from your refrigerator, from an RV refrigerator up on the roof, you can usually come down that and then down alongside the refrigerator to get down to where the batteries might be.
Now, what we did when we custom ordered this rig from Newmar 15 years ago, as a matter of fact, May 17th, this rig will be, we picked it up on May 17th, 15 years ago, this next month. And when we ordered it from the factory, since we were custom ordering it and checking all the boxes we wanted, Newmar is very good to this day about doing custom work. And one of the things that we specified, knowing that Newmar motorhomes came pre-wired for solar, you see that, pre-wire, perfect.
Yeah, I think it was like a 10 gauge wire or something.
Right. We knew that it was not likely to be heavy gauge wire. And what we specified was 2 things, which they did beautifully. We said, we want 6 gauge wire. And they charged us a little bit more, not a problem. But they ran very, very heavy duty 6 gauge wire. Keep in mind when you're talking about wire gauges, the smaller the number,
the
thicker the wire. So 6 gauge wire is very thick. And we said, not only do we want you to run 6 gauge wire, but we want you to route it down from the roof, put a loop of it into our bathroom cabinet up over the toilet, and then down to the batteries. And that way we could put our solar controller inside above the toilet in the bathroom in the cabinet there, and to this day that's where we have our control system for our circuit breaker to turn the batteries off. It's all in the bathroom right there.
Yeah. So I would first ask your manufacturer what gauge wire they used if you don't know or if you can't tell, and then go from there.
So I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who is watching on Facebook and YouTube. We had originally planned to end in just a few minutes, but I have used the power of I don't know what.
Facebook.
I've pulled all the strings I know to pull in order to get Peter and John said they would hang out for a few more questions past our initial timeline. So if you have a question, now's the time to ask it on Facebook or YouTube for Peter and John. We're talking about solar, we're talking about boondocking, we're talking about the RVers TV show. Let's jump right to a question from Dexter, who asks, what is the best battery disconnect switch to have? And should you change your door and compartment locks?
Wow. You mean change your door and compartment locks so that, in general, so that no one has the key? Or are you talking about to protect your lithium batteries from theft?
I would go with the former on that.
We have not changed our locks. And I guess we're not that paranoid about it. Nobody's ever bothered. No one's ever bothered us.
There certainly are options. There are third-party manufacturers because, again, the standard locks, I think they joke and say there's like 7 keys to all. Basically, there's only 7 different keys to all the locks on RVs. There are certainly third-party manufacturers that make other ones that you could get key to like if you felt that was necessary. Of course, the flip side is sometimes it could come in handy because you might know somebody who has the same key if you lock yours in.
Yes. Now, as far as the shut-off switches for the solar panels, when we did our initial installation,
as I say, I don't think we have a specific brand that we could recommend. It's just, of course, you need to make sure it can handle the voltage and amperage you're looking at.
What's the name of the company that did the one?
So we have Blue Sea Solar, I think, or Blue Sea Systems.
So when we did our initial install, those of you who saw our series of videos about going to lithium, our lithium system, we got our battery installed before it went out to the general market. It was not a prototype, but it wasn't actually on sale yet. And because of that, and really to this day, Xantrex does not consider the eGen system to be a user installable item, and therefore you can only have the eGen lithium battery installed at an authorized installer. And we had it done. We were there and we helped, but we mostly watched and filmed. And
it was unique.
We saw the on-off switch that they used, and it's actually a circuit breaker.
Yeah.
And we have twin 30-amp circuit breakers that turn off our I think they're 30 amp.
Yeah, but if Dexter's also asking about like an actual like whole house, turn the power off to the whole house type of thing, there are a bunch of different ones. Again, they have ones that literally just mount onto the battery post itself and all the cables attached to it, and then you can just disconnect all the power from the RV. If that's the kind of thing you're looking at, again, just make sure that it can handle whatever the maximum amperage is going to be through that system so that it doesn't melt down while you're using it.
By the way, I want to say a quick hello to Tyler Hammock, who is here.
Hey, Tyler.
Hello, Tyler. Those of you who don't know, Tyler is the operations manager and know everything man about awnings and slide toppers from Tough Top Awnings. Hi,
and an occasional star on the RVers TV show.
Okay, we've got a question that came in from Russ, who is watching on Facebook, and he's looking to buy a new rig with 330 amp AGM. Okay. Is that correct? 330 AGM?
Amp hours,
okay. And he asks if he takes that out and installs lithium batteries, what else would he need?
Oh, so that's going to depend on how late a model RV you have. So if it's a very recent model RV, then chances are better that there won't be much, if anything, you'd have to replace. It all depends on the charger, your battery charger.
Right. So here's something to keep in mind, that the charging profile on lithium is not the same as the charging profile on AGM, which isn't exactly the same as for flooded lead acid either.
Right.
They all have a different charge profile. And when if you have an older RV, say 10 or 15 years old, like we do,
the charger
probably can be switched between AGM and flooded. And that's it. And it's important that you're aware you probably are going to need a new charger.
Yeah.
So one of the nice things about having new equipment installed when we were with Xantrex is that their system was designed to be able to handle a lithium proper charge profile for lithium. And the reason the charge profile in a nutshell is different, this is important to know if you're thinking about upgrading. The way a typical charging system works on an RV, especially a motorhome or a higher-end RV, is it's a 3-stage charging system that when you hook up to shore power or start your generator, your charger goes into bulk charge first, which is a very high power load rammed into the batteries at very high amperage. And then it will drop down after an hour or two, typically, to absorb charge, which continues charging the battery, and then it will go to float charge, which is like a trickle charge. Well, it doesn't work that way with lithium because lithium just continues in bulk all the way through till it's done. And then it goes to float. There's nothing in between.
One of the advantages of lithium as a battery because it charges so much faster than a flooded lead acid.
Yep.
But yeah, so that would be the first thing to look at would be whether or not your battery charger can be set to a lithium compatible profile. Because if it can't, then it will most likely need to be replaced. And that's typically the big thing that needs to get checked.
And I'm gonna jump into a question that's coming up.
Richie Rich
wants to make sure that we don't miss his question. So Rich, you can.
Stand down.
I'm gonna read it right now. You can stop posting. We got it. Rich said that he rinsed out his Atwood hot water tank with a wand. Very good. The white deposits that came out that caused the rotten egg smell rinsed out.
Yeah.
The smell is back after 30 to 60 days. Will an anode rod work? So I want to mention, Rich, that anode rods are not needed generally in Atwood tanks because Atwood tanks are made of aluminum.
And secondly, the smell is actually not typically the white deposits. Those white deposits are not hydrogen sulfide. They're
water.
Actually a calcium-based deposit. They're a lime scale. Right. So usually the hydrogen sulfide smell is caused by either something in the water, or it can be a bacteria that builds up in the water heater that can basically ferment and cause that smell. So I would actually try draining and sanitizing your water heater.
We've done 3 or 4 different videos about cleaning your water heater using a vinegar and water mixture.
Yeah.
We have ones for Atwood, Suburban.
Well, so that'll get the lime scale out, but it may not necessarily kill the bacteria or
you're
the
talking
algae.
about
so
doing
you might
like
actually
a bleach?
Might need to actually bleach it to kill what's in there that's causing the hydrogen smell.
And the other question is for you, Rich, are you at the same RV park the entire time? Are you getting the same water source coming in? The most likely problem is your source of water.
Yeah. It's like being, a lot of places in the southeast have sort of a hydrogen sulfide smell just to the water, period, and it can be magnified in the hot water tank.
And Brian, I do want to apologize. We did sneak through Boise without stopping to say hi.
We were technically in self-quarantine in the RV while we were driving through.
Yeah,
so
for those of you who don't know, we're currently in British Columbia, and when we got back from New Zealand a very short time ago.
We landed in LAX. We had to fly to
We made a beeline from
Las Vegas.
National Indoor RV Center in Las Vegas, where our rig had been stored for a couple of months. And we made it from Las Vegas to British Columbia in 2 days, basically. And we did not stop.
No, sorry. Next time.
And we couldn't. We've been quarantining ourselves since we got off the plane in Vegas. And when we got here to British Columbia, we were put into mandatory quarantine. We had to give them the address where we were going to be located, our phone number, our email.
We keep waiting for a knock on the door.
We keep waiting for the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, to drive by and make sure we're not out, because we literally are not permitted to leave our site for 14 days. And Adam can tell you all about that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had the same experience when we crossed the border about a week ahead of you guys getting home. So we're thankfully we can at least walk around the block now or go to the grocery store carefully.
I never thought that would be something that I really longed to do, but we're beginning to get there.
Here we are.
If you don't mind, Adam, I just saw a question pop up. If I can jump.
Sure, jump to it.
But you make sure if I'm missing something, let me know. Sam said he has a 19-year-old Xantrex 2,000-watt inverter, which is the exact same unit we had on our Bounder diesel.
Yeah.
And it's having issues, and he wants to replace it with the newest Xantrex 3000 like we have.
Oh, and can he do that with the existing wiring? So technically, you want to just double-check to make sure that the cabling coming to the battery and coming to the inverter from the battery and then coming out of the inverter to your circuit breaker box or whatever is able to handle the increased loads. And that would be on both sides. So The 110 volt side is going to be able to see higher wattage coming through because it's a higher wattage inverter. So you want to just make sure chances are that side is okay. But then the other side would be between the inverter and the battery bank, because now this inverter has a higher amperage charger than the 2000 watt model, which means it's going to be able to pump more amps to the batteries, and you could risk overheating that cabling. So double check both sides. And if you're unsure, check with an electrician or a service tech, just to make sure. And actually, even Santrex may be able to give you answers. If you look in the manual, it'll tell you what gauge wiring is required.
And Adam, if I can hit a couple others real fast.
Sure.
I don't mean to usurp your hosting duties.
Go for it.
This is like a throwback to us, back to Patreon. Jeff mentioned that he has a new, to him, 2015 London Air, and he's got a white fiberglass roof, and he's getting brown stains from leaves that are very stubborn. Maybe a bleach concoction. Jeff, if you're going to use bleach, you have to be very, very sparing with it, very careful.
I would actually start with Simple Green first.
Yeah, I was going to say something like Simple Green would be a better start. If you do use any kind of bleach up there at all, I would keep it very low concentration.
And heavily rinsed.
But keep it up on the roof, not flowing down the sides. Like use a very small amount of it in very contained areas to see if it works. And if it does, let it soak and then blast it off with tons of water.
Because you don't want that rinsing
you
down
dilute
the
it as it goes down the sidewalls.
Yeah, I would try and use the bleach, though, as an absolute last resort, because it could damage the finish of the roof itself.
Yep, and I'm also going to plug the show one more time here, because there's a perfect question here from George Dawson. Been full-timing for 4 years and never boondocked. It says never been docked, but I know what you mean there, George. George, I want to tell you, I'm not going to scold you for not having boondocked in 4 years, but I am going to encourage you to try it, and here's the way I'm going to tell you to do it. We did a segment.
Training wheels.
Yes, training wheels. We did a segment that we filmed in Quartzsite this past winter.
It'll be airing this year as part of Season 2.
It'll air as part of Season 2, and it's going to be about boondocking newbies, and it's going to feature Anthony Nally, the creator and producer of our show, the RVers, and also his lead singer from his band, Wicked Truth, Matt the Rockstar. They had not spent much time boondocking before, and I'm not going to tell you the whole thing, but I will give you a tip on how we got them started and what you'll see in that episode. We had them boondocking in a full hookup RV park, and all they did was turn off the water, close the gray valve, flip off the circuit breaker, and we forbid them from using the bathrooms in the park.
And that way you can try it without having that nerve-wracking.
Yeah, that's the way to try it. And then
that way it gives you an idea of how much water you typically put into your tanks each day,
and how many days you can go.
Yeah,
and then we took them out. You'll have to watch to see what happens.
And you won't have to worry about whether or not in the middle of your shower at night or in the morning you're going to be standing in a puddle of water, because if it happens, you can just go outside and pull the gray valve, and at least that way you're not stuck.
So training wheels, if you will.
Yeah.
Right.
Anthony says, "Uh-oh," when we were talking about exposing his secrets of boondocking the first time. So anytime we can make the producer of the show just a little bit nervous, we're all about it.
Oh, we made him nervous when we were telling him we were taking him boondocking.
Yes, we did. And we're not going to say how it went when we went boondocking. Anything. We're not going to say if it was good, bad, or ugly. We're just going to tell you
But he did say, uh-oh, so...
Guys, I can't imagine a better question to have ended with, somebody who hasn't yet tried it, and I think that's a great starting point. Let's plug the show one more time, coming up on Discovery, currently on Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. Eastern. Check your local listings, and we are in the middle of running Season 1. Season 2 is going to start on May 16th, so we've got a whole bunch of RVers on Discovery. It's also playing on PBS. You can check your local listings to find out exactly when it's on PBS, and also it is on Fun Roads TV, and again, you're going to want to check your local listings because they air it at different times in different markets to best suit the market. Peter and John, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. I know that you mentioned if anybody has any questions, they can continue to leave them in the comments, and we'll continue to monitor them. Any last parting words before we head out tonight?
Well, on a bit of a serious note, a bit of a serious note to end with. First, We know that many of you out there are going through a particularly difficult time. We hope that coming and spending an hour or so with us today to kind of talk about something we're all interested in kind of a fun way as we're all looking forward to getting back out on the road again. We hope that you are all in a safe place and handling this time in a healthy and safe fashion. We are doing that. We know that Adam, who has found a place to call home, your parents' place, right, Adam?
That's right.
We know that we feel very lucky that we have a safe place to go. Quarantining for those of us who boondock is not so difficult because we are used to being in a very small space, but we know it's not the same for everyone, and we have friends and family who are hurting and having a difficult time, whether it's loss of job, difficulty getting food, or staying safe. We hope that you are all staying safe and want to thank you so much for spending this time with us today.
Yes. It means a lot.
Thank you, everybody who's watching. Have a great night. We're going to see you on the road.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Adam.
Thanks so much, Adam.
Take care. And I guess